Welcome to Financial Focus, brought to you by Gulf Coast Financial Services founder and CEO, John Kuykendall. John and his team of financial, legal, and tax professionals have provided North Florida savers and investors sound, comprehensive financial guidance for over 25 years, helping you to achieve important life and planning goals. Be sure to like, subscribe, share, and tune in for more financial focus by visiting gulfcoastfinancial.net.
And welcome into the program. This is Financial Focus, brought to you by the best of the best in financial services, as named by the readers of the Lake City Reporter, 7 years and running the team from Gulf Coast Financial Services. Founder and CEO John Kuykendall joins us each and every week, providing proactive guidance and insight for savers and investors looking to improve their outlook into their financial futures. And John, we always enjoy and appreciate the clarity that you bring to the planning world.
Well, thank you, Peter. I try to bring it down to the smallest level so that we can understand it. I just don't like the voluminous financial plans that you can't understand. I think we have to be simple, and the old keep it simple, stupid. And so KISS method. So we're going to, we do that. And, we're having a lot of changes now. There's a lot of stuff that's proposed, a lot of stuff that's going to be enacted before the end of the year. It's just a busy time for us tax-wise and financial planning-wise, and reviewing these plans that we started out the first of the year with, seeing where we are. And then also, like I said, doing a lot of pre-active tax planning.
Well, I know that a big part of your job is keeping the plans up to date, and a large portion of that is looking at the tax implications. Tax laws change. They change pretty frequently. We've actually got a great guest that's going to be joining us on the program to provide some additional insight on that part of the plan. Ed Slott is a best-selling author. He is host of a PBS special, an annual special, Retire Secure and Safe, and he has been named by the Wall Street Journal as America's leading IRA expert. So he can probably provide some great insight on the tax planning world.
Well, I follow Ed, and he's got a lot of great advice and a lot of great information that we get from him. And he is certainly probably the most knowledgeable person I know in regards to tax planning and what's available to us, and how we react to every bit of this new tax news, and also just the old stuff too. So I'm really excited about today's show. Ed's a great person, and I really enjoy listening to him.
Well, without further ado, we will connect with Ed. But I do want to remind you, ladies and gentlemen, if you've got questions on a financial, investment, retirement planning nature, if you want to make sure that you are being as efficient as possible with identifying opportunities, protecting what's important, keeping as much of your money as possible, pick up the phone, give a call to your local resource, John Kuykendall and the team from Gulf Coast Financial Services and Gulf Coast Tax Advantage, 386-755-9018. That is 386-755-9018. Or you can go online, gulfcoastfinancial.net. That's gulfcoastfinancial.net. So now let's connect. Let's bring our special guest on. He is Ed Slott. He is published best-selling financial author. He is host of the PBS special, Retire Safe and Secure, been named by the Wall Street Journal as America's leading IRA expert. Ed, we appreciate your time on the program.
Well, thanks for having me back. You just told me it's been 4 years, so I guess every election cycle we do this.
Yeah, well, a lot's changed in 4 years. The administration in the office, as well as in actual tax law and code. So a lot to catch up on here, Ed. And Ed, we all bemoan taxes. Why do you feel that the majority of Americans need to be thinking about taxes and planning proactively right now?
Well, because most people don't realize it, but the money they're saving in their IRA and 401k, I hate to break it to you, it's not really their money. A lot of it is owned already by Uncle Sam. I always tell groups, that, your IRA is a joint account with IRS. They're a partner on your account. Maybe it's time for a divorce on that, because the longer it goes, the worse it gets. That IRA, a 401k, and this is something that I know advisors know, but as I travel around the country and speak to consumers, many consumers don't know it. It seems so simple, the difference between tax deferred and tax-free. And when I explain it to them, I usually say something: tax deferred means you won't pay taxes on that money yet. It's a little word, 3 letters, but it has a big impact. As opposed to tax-free, you'll never pay taxes on that money. But the problem is, and why you need to address tax planning, most people have most of their retirement savings in tax-deferred accounts, money that has not yet been taxed, like IRAs and 401ks and 403bs. They are a sitting duck for future higher taxes, and most people do nothing about them. I love clients used to come in and show me their statements. I said, what are you looking at? That's not your money. That's just temporarily on your letterhead. You're not keeping any of that. And they can't understand it, because even now they're making money in the market, hand over fist like everybody. And I said, oh, you're doing a great job. Maybe you'll get a thank you from Uncle Sam. He is a partner. You're doing great for him.
Yeah, those 401ks and those IRA balances looking fantastic, but the IRS is part owner in those accounts. So, Ed, as opposed to 10 or 15 years ago, do you think that there's been a big paradigm shift in the mentality and the way that we should be saving for retirement?
I think people are more aware because Roths have become more popular, and especially Roth 401ks at work. When they first came out, not a lot of companies signed on, but lots of companies have them now. And I think word is getting out, maybe through people like me and you and other people out there, saying, the old way of loading up in an IRA and a 401k, you're just building a savings account for Uncle Sam at some point. Maybe you want to diversify your tax risk, what I call tax risk diversification, and over time do a series of maybe smaller annual conversions. So over time, you take down that growing, snowballing debt in your IRA and build up tax-free, so you have more tax-free money available when you'll need it most in retirement. When I speak to consumer groups, I say, in retirement, that's not the time to get hit with sticker shock when you realize tax rates have gone up to 50%. And this is the time to do the planning. You want tax-free income in retirement if you can have it, and you can.
Well, let's back up for a moment, Ed. We are in historically low tax rates and brackets right now. Why does that make this an advantageous time to consider Roth contributions or Roth conversions?
Well, contributions are okay, but the big money's in conversions. Contributions are limited, $6,000, $7,000 a year or so. It helps, but the big money's in conversions, because the fundamental principle of all good tax planning is to, and this sounds simple, but it really works, is to always pay taxes at the lowest rates. Sort of like with stocks, where they say buy low and sell high. Now, I didn't make that one up, but that's a good one too. Write that down. Buy low, sell high. It's the same thing. The old comedian, I always quote him because Henny Youngman, he had the great one-liners from the 50s and 60s. He said, I'm putting all my money into taxes, the only thing sure to go up. He was right. It was funny when he said it. He didn't realize how right on the nose he was. This is a bet on tax rates. And the more money you accumulate in IRAs and 401ks, the greater the odds your bet will pay off with a Roth conversion. And the bet is that rates will be higher when you'll be taking the money out in retirement or passing it on to heirs after death. So you want to look at it while rates are low, even if that means paying a tax now when you normally wouldn't have to. Some people just can't get past writing the check when they could say, but I'll put this off to another day. And that's when I have to tell them, the problem doesn't go away. It's like this sign my dentist has in our office. She says, ignore your teeth and they'll go away. It's the same thing here. If you ignore it, yes, it's going to be eaten away, eroded by future higher taxes. This is one of the reasons I love the Roth. It removes the worry, the fear, the anxiety, the risk of what future higher taxes could do to your standard of living in retirement. Look at the rates. As you said, Peter, we're in the lowest rates most people will ever see. But even when you tell people that, as you correctly stated, you have a lot of people, consumers, that say, well, when I'm in retirement, I'll be in a lower bracket. I'm finding that's absolutely not the case. I've seen it for years with my own clients. They'll come in, as a tax preparer, not anymore. I sort of gave most of that up, my CPA practice, after about 40 years or so of that. But I would see people and they would question it themselves. They'd come in for their taxes. They say, I'm retired. How can it be my income's higher than my best working years? Because that IRA grew and grew and grew. And at 72, which is the current age now, you're forced to take that money down and pay tax. So those RMDs, required minimum distributions, can actually bump up your bracket and your marginal rate, the rate you pay on the next dollar of income. And it adds to income. Even though you don't need the income, you're forced to take it. And that throws off that myth, I would call it, that you'll be in a lower bracket in retirement.
And we often talk on the program about how paying less in taxes is the equivalent of getting higher returns on your investment, but typically carries far less risk.
Right. You can make a fortune in good tax planning. But you know what? Most people, like I said, don't want to look at that. They don't want to pay a tax up front. It goes against the grain of everybody. Why would I write a check when I could keep deferring? Because every day you keep deferring, you're losing more money. You're losing purchasing power based on future rates. Plus, we have the Secure Act, which means even if you're okay during your working or during your lifetime, beneficiaries may be in their own highest bracket, and they may have to pull it all out within 10 years, losing a lot of that to unnecessary and excessive taxes that can be planned for now.
Once again, we are talking with America's leading IRA expert, Ed Slott. And Ed, it has been a while since we caught up. Some things have changed. Other things are being proposed to change a lot, but let's talk about law already on the book for just a moment. The Secure Act passed in 2020. A lot of people had done IRA planning prior to the passage of the Secure Act. What do they need to understand about how this changed the rules on their IRA and now maybe revise those plans?
Right. After 40 years of studying tax law, I noticed one constant. Whenever Congress names a tax law, you can almost always bet that whatever they name it, it will do exactly the opposite. So when I saw a tax act called the Secure Act, my first reaction is, hold on to your wallets. And sure enough, as you said, Pete, they upended over 20, 30 years of established tax law that people relied on for their estate plans, for leaving their IRA money or 401k money to their children and grandchildren. The big change was Congress eliminated something we've called the stretch IRA, the ability for a beneficiary when they inherit to stretch or extend distributions out over their life expectancy, 30, 40, 50, 80 years for a one-year-old. Congress felt IRAs and other retirement accounts, they should only be used for retirement. No more of this big tax deferral stretch IRA. We're going to limit most non-spouse beneficiaries to a 10-year period. So all of those accumulated funds will be taxed in a tighter window, bunched into 10 years. Beneficiaries will lose big chunks of that. And remember, Congress can always change existing tax law. As CPAs, we have this old saying, tax law is written in pencil. So you have to plan with what you have now, low rates, to take advantage of this. You have to look for alternatives to keep more of your hard-earned money. And you'll need an advisor that knows this area, that has specialized knowledge in IRA planning. I'm finding that's a problem.
Indeed.
Lots of financial advisors can help you make money. But when it comes to doing tax planning, like I do a lot of these programs, as you know, for advisors. And then during the pandemic, I did a lot of these just like this virtual. I have a few coming up today after this. And and especially in a lot of these big financial institutions or financial advisor companies, they always warn me, do not talk about tax planning. You know, it's like kryptonite. You can't say tax planning. We don't do tax planning. That's someone else's job. Well, if you're not doing tax planning, you better hand it off to somebody who is, because that's where all the money is. That's where you can do the best job for your client on the back end.
Well, I do want to take a moment, Ed, because proactive advisors can actually take specialized training, become a member of your team affiliated with you and your team. You essentially serve as their back office for them in a large part of the tax planning aspect.
Well, we've been doing training for advisors for well over 20 years, probably more like 30. And we run our 2-day programs. You can look them up at online, irahelp.com. I see you have it on your screen behind you. These are our 2-day foundational fundamentals program, 2 solid days. They walk away with a 400+ page manual. Matter of fact, we just finished one. Here's what this manual looks like. There's a visual. This is my copy with my own speaker notes on here. Me and my team of IRA experts, over 400 pages in 2 days, covering everything. We have this section 25 IRA rules you need to know. This is based on all the mistakes I've seen over 30 years, the biggest ones made mainly by advisors who didn't know the rules. We cover that. We cover trusts. All those rules changed after the Secure Act. Even the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, you go before that. We talked about Roth IRAs, remember? But you have to be careful with Roth IRAs. Yes, I'm a big fan, but an advisor has to be very careful before they encourage or they advise on a Roth conversion. Why? Because one of the big changes in the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, Roth conversions were made permanent, no do-overs. You have to get it right the first time. So you might want to work with a CPA or other tax advisors so you have a good projection of what the tax might be. Because as situations change, what's going to happen? The client will still be stuck with that tax bill. And that shouldn't deter you from converting. You should just do converting with planning in mind, hopefully to stay in the lower bracket. So we do this 2-day training. We go through everything, rollover options, every possible topic you can think of. And we go at I should say, people that know my programs, at a brisk pace to get through 400 pages in 2 days. But then we even have a more intense, a more advanced training program. That's the one I think you're talking about. It's called Ed Slott's Elite IRA Advisor Group. And that's for advisors that really want to dig in and get specialized knowledge. So the first thing, you have to go through this 2-day program to qualify for that. But then we have our elite group, and that's where you have access among the many other benefits of the membership. It's not like you go to a seminar. We're with you. It's a years long. Some people have been in our group, many of them over 15 years, advisors studying this. Matter of fact, we just had meetings virtually this time again a couple of weeks ago. And even our seasoned members over 15 years were saying things, oh, yeah, I forgot about that. Oh, right. Your wheels start turning. And they have access to us with Q&A. They're a member of a group. And these are the advisors that are bringing in the largest accounts because they can deal with clients with more confidence, the demeanor, just the way they talk to people, knowing they have the answers after a client accumulates money. To me, that's just the first half of the game. But the average advisor stops there because that's how they were trained. They were trained to make people money. Who can argue with that?
No. I will say this, though, Ed. I think every financial recommendation does have some tax implications that are going to be involved. So it's better as an investor, as a saver, being proactive to deal with somebody who does have some amount of specialized training on the tax implications and consequences as well. Kind of circling back to that Secure Act, Ed, does the end of the stretch IRA provision amount to basically no more than a de facto windfall death tax for the IRS?
In some cases, but there are ways around it too. That's where good planning can be done. Congress is always a few steps behind, luckily for us. So all they did with the Secure Act, I think, is incentivize all of us to do the better planning that we should have been doing all along. So now we know Congress doesn't like IRAs for wealth transfer and estate planning purposes. All right, we'll exchange what Congress now has downgraded IRAs and 401ks as estate planning assets. We'll exchange them for better assets, maybe Roth IRAs, maybe permanent whole life insurance. And I don't sell insurance, but to me, that may be a way better plan for certain clients to take down some of that IRA money, like we talked about with a Roth, put it into an insurance policy and leave that to the beneficiaries where they don't have to worry about the 10-year rule about RMDs or even taxes, because that will be income tax free. And the client can find that with life insurance, especially if they want more control, they can use that for a trust. It works much better. Even before the Secure Act, the life insurance plan worked much better than an IRA going into a trust.
Well, you mentioned control. And what I find that most savers and investors want is larger inheritances, more control, and less tax.
Where'd you learn that from?
Yeah, those are three things that almost every client at the root of it, they want to achieve those things. So because of that, a lot of clients prior to the Secure Act named trusts as beneficiaries of their IRA, or maybe created IRA trusts. Why do those individuals specifically need to revisit those plans now?
Well, yeah, most of those plans won't work. I recommended those plans years before the Secure Act. And I said, well, the client would say, matter of fact, I have that in my book. The new retirement savings time bomb. I have larger inheritances, more control, less tax is my mantra, because every client for, like I said, 40 years, it always came down to, how do I get those things? So I told them, now I tell them, well, I tell advisors to tell their clients. I don't have that many clients of my own. It's funny, when I was in my 30s, all my clients were in my 60s. Now I'm in my 60s, they're all dead. Or the ones that are hanging on, they call me every now and then. They're in their 90s just to call and kibitz and talk and stuff like that. But when we set up a trust as a beneficiary, we often did it because a client had $1 million, $2 million, $3 million in an IRA, and they would all say the same thing. It took me a long time to earn this money. I want my kids to get it. I even want my grandkids to get it, but I don't want them blowing it. It took me too long to earn it. I'm worried about the way they handle money. I'm worried about bad marriages, divorce, remarriage, bankruptcy, lawsuit, other problems, people preying on them now online. I want post-death control. So we would name a trust. And before the Secure Act, you could have a conduit trust. They could get post-death control. The kids would only get like little crumbs out of the trust, the RMDs. But there are no more RMDs. These trusts will no longer work to achieve those objectives. In fact, it has the exact opposite effect. After 10 years, everything the client wanted would be the opposite. The client wanted post-death control and lower tax and larger inheritances. What's going to happen if they don't update their plans at the end of 10 years, the very kids they said, I don't want them getting their hands on big money, all of a sudden they'll have a $10 million payout. Larger taxes, there's no control because it goes right through the trust. Now, you can keep it in the trust with some of the trust, but then you pay tax at trust rates. That's why I say IRAs, especially large IRAs, are not a good estate planning asset anymore. That's exactly what Congress intended. You should look for things like Roth IRAs and life insurance. For the large IRAs, the life insurance solution really does it. And it really just comes down to changing the vehicle. Yes, the IRA used to be a great vehicle to use, but thanks to Congress, that vehicle, the jalopy, has pooped out. It's time to change vehicles, upgrade to a limo, a life insurance limo. The client doesn't care what vehicle will get them there. They just want those three things: larger inheritances, more control, less tax. Where do I sign?
Ed Slott, he is the host of Retire Safe and Secure on PBS, and we are talking with him about proactive tax planning and maneuvers. And Ed, again, law already on the books. Let's talk about these tax rate and bracket changes that will occur in 2026. Why does that make right now a fantastic window of opportunity to do this proactive planning? What are the consequences if we wait?
Well, now we know what it costs. We have, definiteness. We know what the rates are. You can look them up. You know what something costs. Everybody likes to know what something costs. Who walks into a store and says, I'll have this, that. Do you want to know the price? Nah, don't worry. You can tell me 10 years later what the price will be. Nobody does that. They want to know what it costs. And there is a cost to moving, I always like to say, from accounts that are forever taxed to accounts that are never taxed, tax deferred to tax-free. There's a cost, but if you can reduce that cost by taking advantage of known lowest rates in history, you should do it now. We don't know what the future is going to be, but we do know the biggest obstacle, the biggest threat to your retirement savings is a four-letter word. Nope, it's not kids. Everybody thinks that. No, that's a lousy investment. Everybody knows that. It used to be the American dream was owning your own home. Now it's getting the kids out of it. No, the four-letter word I'm talking about is math. M-A-T-H. Look at the growing deficits and debts. At some point, these bills are going to have to be paid off. And all Congress talks about is taxing billionaires. Well, that's not going to work. There's very few of them anyway, and they're going to be 10 miles ahead of you by the time any law gets in. So who's going to be left holding the bag? The low-hanging fruit. Everybody that didn't do the kind of planning we're talking about may be at risk, at high risk of future higher rates eating into their lifestyle in retirement.
Well, we've heard a lot about proposed changes to certain tax laws, especially involving IRAs. With the Build Back Better proposals and the infrastructure and spending bill, a lot of the language included there actually has to do with changes to IRAs, required minimum distributions. How many, Ed, do you see this actually potentially affecting?
Well, most of these changes are extreme, and I don't think you'll see them that quickly. But Congress has tipped their hands. You know where they're going. They look at those IRAs, those tax deferred accounts, as a big, juicy steak. I keep saying low-hanging fruit, easy to get to, because that's the deal we all made with the government. We got a tax deduction up front, but the deal was when we take it out, we have to pay tax at the prevailing rates. I don't think you'll see rates go lower, so the bet will pay off. I believe the bet will pay off that tax rates, if you pay something now at lower rates, you'll be in a much better situation in retirement and even for your heirs beyond that. If rates go up, you made the right call.
Well, so much to get to in so little time, Ed. I do want to change subjects here. We generally broadcast on a lot of stations and in avenues where we have charitably inclined individuals listening. Those that are tithing to their church, a big one. I know that there are special provisions where we can gift some of our IRA and essentially have that truly tax-free money. Can you talk about the QCD and maybe what you have coined as the Mega Qcd opportunity that's available as kind of a this year only one-time deal?
All right, let's talk about the QCD, Qualified Charitable Distributions, one of the best provisions ever created for my money. And the reason is most people are charitably inclined. In fact, I would say 100% of the people, based on my 40 years experience of doing taxes. When I was doing returns, if I would ask somebody, oh, did you give to charity? Oh, yeah. Nobody ever said no. Nobody. Now, maybe they didn't want to say no, but according to my unofficial survey, 100 out of 100 people give to charity. And I think for pretty much that's the case. But the problem is, since the changes a few years ago in the tax law, most people don't think about it, but they're getting absolutely no tax benefit from the gifts they're making. They're getting personal enjoyment and fulfillment, but no tax benefit. Why not have Uncle Sam kick in? Well, you can do that with now QCDs, Qualified Charitable Distributions. First, if you're charitably inclined, IRAs are the best, absolute best assets to give to charity. They're loaded, infested, not invested, infested with taxes. That's the kind of stuff you want to give to charity because they don't pay taxes. They don't care. They'll get you used, beat up IRA. They don't care. That's full value for them. So that's the money you want to give. You want to save the other money for your family where they might get a step up in basis and other advantages, not the IRA money. So this is a provision that allows people who are not getting any benefit. And when I said they're not getting any tax benefit, because most people no longer itemize their deductions. They take the new higher standard deductions, so they're getting no tax benefit. They're not getting a deduction. In this provision, the qualified charitable distribution, or what we call QCDs, they can transfer directly from their IRA to the charity. Not only, now they still don't get a tax deduction, but they get something way better, a tax exclusion. It's excluded from income. Remember before I talked about the fundamental principle in all good tax planning is to always get that money out at the lowest rates. This gets that money out. Money you were going to donate anyway, gets it out of your IRA, zero tax, tax-free. The only downside to this QCD is that it's not available to enough people. It's only available to IRA owners, not from plans like 401ks. Only IRA owners age 70 and a half or older, or IRA beneficiaries age 70 and a half or older. It's limited to 100,000 a year, but that's a pretty good limit for most people. And it's only available from IRAs, a direct transfer, has to be a direct transfer to the charity. And it can even offset the income from your required minimum distributions. So it's age 70 and a half, even though the RMD, required minimum distribution age, is 72, this age stayed at 70 and a half. And you have to be 70 and a half. If you turn 70 and a half tomorrow, you can't do it today. So you actually have to be 70 and a half. So that's, I think that's a great provision. If you're going to give anyway, give that IRA money and do it as a direct transfer. What a way to bring down this taxable account at absolutely no tax cost, benefit to the charity, benefit to you, and you're giving the right way. I'll give you a simple example. If you normally give $10,000 to a charity, you're getting no tax benefit out of it. If you do a $10,000 QCD and you're at a 24% tax bracket, you'll save $2,400, real dollars, right off your tax bill just by giving the same amount this way. The only loser is Uncle Sam. Now, you asked me about this other thing I call the Mega Qcd.
Yeah, and this probably doesn't apply to a large number of people, but for the one or two people in the audience that it does apply to, a pretty significant savings opportunity.
Yeah, don't look up Mega Qcd. I totally made that up. I had to call it something. Mega Qcd. For this year, now I sound like an infomercial, Peter. You know, for this year and this year only, you get a one-time shot. It was actually last year too, but the break from the Stimulus Act ends after this year. You're allowed to deduct charitable gift, cash gifts. Oh, and with the QCD, donor advised funds don't qualify. They don't qualify for this either. It has to be a direct gift to a charitable organization. Same thing here. For direct cash gifts, you can get 100% of AGI, adjusted gross income deduction. It used to be much lower, 60%. It goes back to that next year. So what you could do, if you just heard me talk about a QCD and you're saying to yourself, you know, I have a large IRA, that would be good to fit my charitable needs, but I don't qualify. Why? Well, maybe I'm not 70 and a half, or maybe my money's in a 401k, or maybe I want to give more than the 100,000. I got a deal for you. For only for the rest of this year, you can do what I call a Mega Qcd. Let's say you have a giant IRA. Like you said, Peter, it doesn't apply to a lot of people, but some people could really make a dent. Let's say you want to give $1 million and you just heard me say, wow, why not give the IRA money and save my appreciated property for my kids who can get a step up in basis? So you take $1 million out of your IRA. That raises your AGI by $1 million. But now you could turn around and donate $1 million to a charity and get an itemized deduction because you're way over the standard deduction limits. That can pretty much offset all the tax and get that money out almost tax-free from your IRA. Only available for the rest of this year. Don't do that before 59 and a half. Because if you take the money out before 59 and a half, even though you don't have the 70 and a half rule, you could have a 10% early distribution penalty. And don't do it from a Roth. That's already taxed. We want tax breaks. We don't want to give money we already paid tax on.
We are speaking with America's leading IRA expert, as named by the Wall Street Journal, Mr. Ed Slott, and so many other strategies and solutions that I want to talk to you about and get your opinion on, Ed, and identify where more people, more savers and investors can proactively save money simply for time purposes. Wanted to get your opinion on one last thing. What do you think about the discussion, the comment from Janet Yellen on the proposal to tax unrealized capital gains? Is that ever going to go anywhere?
I think that's ridiculous. It's been tried for over 100 years. Step up in basis, that's what we're talking about. I don't know if it's the unrealized or the step up in basis. They're kind of similar in some aspects, but I don't know if that's what you meant. The step up in basis is 100 years old. I don't think that's ever going away, because what always seems to happen when the rubber hits the road and they get ready to enact it or even put it in a bill, they start realizing, oh, this is going to hit a lot of unintended regular type taxpayers in their homes and businesses, people with money, property built up in a small business, property, plant, equipment. You're just hitting all the wrong people. It's always the way, to me. Whenever they want to do something that they say will get the really rich people, they throw out this net. The rich people, the big fish, they're already swimming in another ocean by then, and they capture all the small fish. So it always gets hit. I always believe these things always fall on the regular working people, unintended targets. So I hope that doesn't pass. Plus, the idea of taxing unrealized wealth that you're talking about, that's like doing an estate tax every year to find out their net worth. Now, these billionaires, can you imagine, where their holdings are all over the world. Half of the time you can't even find them. It would take IRS maybe 10 years to figure out what they're even worth. And they have to do this every year and then tax it. And then how is it going to look politically when one year their net worth, and they have an army of accountants and lawyers that can make their net worth almost look like a loss. And then the government is going to have to issue billions of dollars in refund checks to these billionaires. How would that look like? How would that look politically? I don't think this is a workable thing. They're just chasing after these so-called wealthy, rich people. There's not enough of them. You may have seen Elon Musk made a comment, which I agree with. He said, once you run out of other people's money, they're going to come after yours. Well, they're not going to get their money, so all that's left is yours.
Well, larger inheritances, more control, less taxes, common goals for most proactive savers and investors. Ed Slott has been helping people achieve those things for years. And I think the key to that, Ed, in a large part, is some smart, proactive tax planning. Thank you for joining us and providing your insight on how more of us can get proactive and rethink how we're handling our taxes.
Well, thanks for having me on the program and having my website flash on behind you there. I was going to say earlier, I said, well, that looks familiar. And then it hit me. Oh, there's my book. There's our 2-day program. This guy's, anyway, thanks for having me on the program.
Always a pleasure, Ed. We appreciate the time. Look forward to having you back here in the near future.
Okay, thanks.
Well, that was a great interview with a very knowledgeable expert in the area of tax planning. Ed Slott, man, he moves at a quick pace. Lots of important information packed in there. John, anything in particular that you took away from that you feel proactive planners should be paying special attention to?
Well, I think one of the things that he mentioned, Peter, was the fact that life insurance now is a great financial planning tool. It's a great estate planning tool also. It's one of the few things that passes tax-free. So the death benefit, which it's always been tax-free, but also that we can build up that tax-free income within the policy. And these new policies, I got to tell you, Peter, I've been selling life insurance for over 50 years now. I hate to say that, but the new policies are so much better than the life insurance that our grandfathers and our fathers had that it's just no comparison. This is great stuff.
Yeah. And Ed even stated with the Secure Act, those tax law changes, and with several of the proposals, it made that distinction, that difference, all that much more prevalent, that life insurance is a fantastic vehicle for more control, more inheritance, less taxes. And so a vehicle that we should consider as part of our financial and legacy plan.
The other thing that he mentioned that we're doing here, and we do it all year long, is those qualified distributions from our IRAs, so that we can do a charitable contribution, have it count for our RMD, but not have it count for our income tax. In a lot of cases, that's really needed because some people are on the threshold of going into another Part B, Medicare Part B of premium increase. And so that will keep it from doing that. We really try to use that strategically all year long.
And then the Roth conversions. For anybody who's got a big tax deferred account, it is not pay never, it is pay later, but it may be a good time to pay now proactively and reduce your lifetime tax bill on those accounts.
Well, we've said over and over again that we're in the lowest tax bracket we're going to be in for a long, long time, if ever. I mean, this may be it. With the debt that we have, the way that we have to pay for that debt, taxes have to go up in order to do that. There are going to be all kinds of new things coming out, taxing different segments of the population. And so if you've done a good job of planning, a good job of saving, you may end up paying more taxes than the guy next door to you.
Well, we don't want that. And that's why we do need to plan proactively, be paying attention, and sit down with the team there from Gulf Coast Financial Services if you have any questions, concerns, or want to identify strategies to be more efficient to keep more of your money. Pick up the phone, give them a call, 386-755-9018, 386-755-9018. 386-755-9018, or you can go online, gulfcoastfinancial.net, gulfcoastfinancial.net. You can find them on all of the major social media platforms at Gulf Coast Financial or Gulf Coast Financial Services as well. And of course, always the sister company, Gulf Coast Tax Advantage, looking at things proactively from the financial and the tax planning standpoint. Such a benefit for the clients of Gulf Coast Financial Services. We want to say thank you again to our very special guest, Ed Slott, for joining us on the program. John, appreciate your time, your guidance, and always good checking in with Ed as well.
Oh, yeah. Well, thank you, Peter. I appreciate you arranging for Ed to come on the show today. I just hope everybody out there has a good week. And don't forget, we need to be proactive. We can't just sit back and let retirement happen.
Absolutely. Always a pleasure speaking with John Kuykendall, founder, CEO there at Gulf Coast Financial Services, named best of the best in financial services 7 years and running by the readers of the Lake City Reporter. Lake City, your resource. Give them a call, 386-755-9018, 386-755-9018, 386-755-9018. John, we'll talk to you next time.
Okay, thanks, Peter.
Be sure to like, subscribe, share, and tune in for more financial focus by visiting gulfcoastfinancial.net. The information presented on this program is provided for informational purposes only, without warranty of accuracy, completeness, or suitability for a particular purpose. This program is not intended to be and does not constitute financial, investment, legal, or tax advice. This information is general in nature and not specific enough to be construed as advice. You should not make any decision based on the information presented on this program without independent consultation with an appropriately licensed professional or competent advisor. Investment in securities or the market involves a potential risk for loss of principal. Trading, therefore, may not be suitable for all listeners. Annuity guarantees are based solely on the financial strength and claims paying ability of the issuing company. Withdrawals of growth from annuities may be taxable as ordinary income in the year it is taken. Individuals should review contracts for specific details of the product's features and costs. Early withdrawals may subject the owner to penalties, fees, or taxes. John Kuykendall is registered with and securities are offered through Kovac Securities Inc., member FINRA SIPC, found online at www.kovacsecurities.com. Advisory services are offered through Gulf Coast Financial Services Inc., a registered investment advisor in Florida. Gulf Coast Financial Services Inc. is not affiliated with Kovac Securities Inc. or Kovac Advisors Inc. Past performance is not indicative of future results. All investing involves risk. Investment decisions should be based on your own goals, time horizon, and tolerance for risk. Due to various factors including changing market conditions and/or applicable laws, the content may no longer be reflective of current opinions or positions.